Welcome, Artie. Really good to see you again. Um, just to get us started, could you just quickly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Dan. Really good to see you again as well. And thank you for inviting me to this podcast. So I'm Arti Samani. I'm based in London, and I run my own consulting business, which focuses on human manipulation fraud, which are powered by AI. So typically they manifest in the form of deepfake and social engineering. Fraud, it's a threat to us as individuals, but also to the organizations that we engage in.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And the topic of conversation that we planned for today is deep fakes. Let's start off with a really simple question, just to make sure that everybody's clear. What is a deep fake?
So any media, and a media includes image, voice, video, that is manipulated to to demonstrate that an individual did or said something that they didn't. So it takes the original media, manipulates it to the extent that it appears very realistic, and it appears as if someone said or did something they did not do. It's typically used for malicious purposes, so either to gain access to data or information or money. It is also often used in bullying, in kind of revenge mechanism, etc. So it's synthetically generated media using the original to make it appear as if someone said or did something they did not, used for malicious purposes, and it is often, most often, powered by artificial intelligence. So AI as a technology is utilized to bring this together to make it very realistic. And generative AI, very specifically, which is by design, generative AI is designed to create outputs which are very, very human-like. Not only they are human-like, but they are outputs that can be scaled and can be created very quickly. So generative AI now is allowing people to create very realistic deepfake videos as well as clone voices, which are often used for malicious purposes.
Wow. Okay. And just to be clear, so it doesn't have to be malicious purposes. So when I go onto X, for example, and there's a humorous video of, I don't know, Donald Trump saying something goofy, and it's not clearly he's not saying that in real life, that would count as a deep fake as well, would it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's sometimes used in jest to sort of put celebrities or politicians in situations that makes it funny, in meme situations, etc. It is often used in marketing as well for good. So when brands want to market their products, but they don't have necessarily the resources to invest, they can use deepfake with permission of the person whose image is being utilized. It's used for learning and training programs, again, with the permission of the instructor, so that the recording is faster, the output turnaround time is faster and more cost effective. So there are positive uses of this type of technology, but most often at the moment it is being used for malicious purposes.
Yeah, so we've ourselves used I guess you'd call it a deep fake of my voice to read some of the blog posts that I've written, because we were experimenting with doing sort of audio versions of those, and we used a tool. I think it was called 11 Labs. It was very, very convincing. It made me sound, I thought, slightly better than I do in real life, so I really liked it. But yeah, and it was a great time saver. But yes, I understand that it's the nefarious side of things, which is really, really concerning, and that's really where your focus is. And so, can you give us some examples of how deep fakes are used in nefarious ways?
Absolutely. So it's often not just the deepfake which is used as a as an attack vector. Various different things come together. So there will be There'll be a phishing campaign, which is combined with a cloned voice, which is combined with a deepfake video, which is combined with sort of email a security breach or a domain takeover or a phone number takeover, etc. So a lot of different types of vectors come together to form a very, very successful attack. A key component of that is a voice clone or a deepfake video, because what happens is that plays on the inherent human instinct of trusting something that you see and you hear, especially if you recognize that voice, if you recognize that face. So it plays on the human psychology to really trick the individual into parting with the asset, whether it's data, information, money, that the threat actor is trying to do. So typically it manifests in the form, for an individual, in the form of investment scams. So a celebrity deepfake will appear on your social media feed, perhaps asking you to, or telling you that this is a great investment opportunity and it will set you up for retirement or your children's university fees, etc. So that's one form in which, in the way that it manifests in a consumer's environment. Often, and rather dangerously, it is used in romance scams. So when people use dating sites to meet potential partners, at some point in that process, they will have a video call with that individual or a voice call, and that can sometimes be a deep fake or a clone voice. That individual doesn't exist. And the aim is to make this person fall in love with them, to then ultimately part with money, with selling the dream of creating a beautiful, happy life together, etc. In the context of a business, it appears in a slightly different way. So, in the context of an organization or a business environment, typically the executive team, whether it's the CEO or the CFO or some C suite executive in an organization, is used as an impersonation target. So, for instance, a CFO will be the target that is impersonated, i.e., their image or their voice will be utilized to clone and to make a deep fake, to make them say and appear things that they didn't do it before or ever. That asset is then utilized to contact the victim, and the victim is an employee within that organization who is close enough to that CXO who's being used as a deepfake impersonation target, to be able to execute on the instructions that they are receiving. So usually it might start with an email from this CXO who might say, "Hey, Joe, XYZ is happening in the business and we need to have a conversation. I need to give you some instructions. Please follow them and it's confidential. Let's have a call." So this individual, because they see an email, they will get on the call, and the call is actually not the call with their CXO. It is a cloned voice of their CXO. And now technology allows us to not just clone the voice, but to have real-time conversation. So if I say something, the technology will respond. Generative AI is smart enough to respond in context to what I say in the cloned voice. So the person thinks that they're actually hearing their CXO's voice and they're having a real-time conversation. And the conversation then gives them instructions to either transfer funds or to give access to a particular software or gateway into a database, etc., that then allows the threat actor to gain access to information. So that's how it may manifest in a clone voice type environment. Taking it one step further, it might start with on a WhatsApp or an SMS, because a lot of organizations now do conduct business over these platforms as well. We are not just limited to emails anymore. And in there, they might say, okay, let's have we're going through this exercise of acquisition, etc. I need to give, this is confidential information, so I don't want to write it down. Let's do a quick video call, and I can give you instructions over video on where we need the funds transferred, etc. Now, in that instance, the individual will jump on the video call and they might think that they are talking with their CXO. In reality, they are perhaps not talking with their CXO, and they're talking with an impersonation of the CXO.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's completely crazy. And so I noticed that your voice hasn't changed there, but that's something that the technology that you're using now is obviously just manipulating the image, but you could in theory use something that manipulates your voice and transforms your voice as well.
Absolutely. So this is an example of how a live video deepfake might manifest. So clearly, what you're seeing on the screen is not Rihanna. It is Artie who is impersonating Rihanna's and using her face. The voice hasn't changed, but the face has changed. So the point is that deepfakes are so convincing and so realistic. We often think that on a live call we are speaking to the individual that we're speaking with, and um, that that's creating trust. But what I'm just demonstrating now in this moment is that even what appears to be a live video call can be manipulation and impersonation of someone, um, but it's not the real individual. So these are some of the ways in which deepfakes these days manifest in our business environment. They manipulate our instinct of trusting the individual that you see the face of and the voice that you hear. And the one of the most an example that happened earlier this year, which has been in the media quite a lot, was a UK company, but their Hong Kong office was targeted. So a financial professional in the Hong Kong office was the victim. That individual was targeted by the deepfake of the CFO of that organization, who is based in the UK. Over the course of few days, this individual received calls, etc., from that CFO, which made them believe that this is a real conversation. And ultimately, the CFO instructed the individual to join a video call in which further instructions would be given. They joined the video call. There were about 10 people on that call from the executive team, from the partner, their partners, etc. Every single face on that video call was a deep fake except the victim. And the victim had no way to tell that these were not real people. They followed the instructions and transferred almost 25 million US dollars into a fraudulent account. So these are some of the examples in how deepfake manifest in our business environment and our personal environment. It's not hypothetical, it is very real, and it is happening every day.
So that's crazy. That's a very interesting story. But just going back to the Rihanna example you just did then,
Mhm.
how quick, how easy, what kind of skills do you need to do something like that? Is it very accessible? Is it?
Yeah, great question. So you need one single still image of an individual to create a good enough, realistic deepfake video. And you need just 3 seconds of someone's voice to clone their voice in a very realistic fashion. So just one still image, which appears, we all have one still image of ourselves, usually on LinkedIn in a professional profile. And a lot of people now have their voices as well. We do a lot of correspondence via voice notes on our WhatsApp. And if that has been hacked, then it's very easy for the threat actor to get access to short voice clips, which can allow them to clone that voice very realistically. So it's not difficult. What I used just then is a very inexpensive web tool. So I didn't need to learn any technology. I was just able to create an account, um, which was very inexpensive, and I'm able to now upload single image. I literally uploaded just one still image of Rihanna, and I demonstrated what I just did there. So it's very accessible. There are literally guided videos online that are available that give you step-by-step instructions on how to do this. And this is in the on sort of regular accessible media like YouTube. There is a whole dark web economy, and on the dark web, you literally have playbooks, manuals, etc., which allow you to create not just deepfakes, but also how to launch these kind of attacks step by step. So generative AI type tools are available on the dark web that allow you to create very realistic emails, SMSs that bypass the email security gateways, etc. So the access to the victim becomes very easy using generative AI. And then these free or inexpensive tools, which are readily available, make it then again very easy to create realistic deepfakes. Combine it all together with the step-by-step instructions, one can launch a reasonably successful attack.
So something that's crazy, but something that's really surprising there and concerning is that you just put yourself forward as Rihanna, and you did that in our secure Microsoft 365 Teams environment, that we've got for our company. We've got all sorts of security layers protecting that, and yet you've managed to very easily and quickly just put this completely fake video of yourself as Rihanna um, into our environment. And I find that's really a scary aspect of it as well, is that you could be fooled that, oh, this is our own environment, it's super secure, we've got like a crack security team who are, have secured Microsoft 365 for us. And yeah, you just showed that actually that doesn't really count for anything.
Yeah, I mean, you've done all the right things in your business. You have all the different security layers, the gateways, etc., and that is absolutely the way to go. So I'm not saying discard any of that. You
Of
do need,
course.
but the defensive tech at the moment is not keeping up with the offensive tech. And what I mean by that is that the technology, which is designed to detect and protect against these deepfake, is getting better, but it is just not keeping up with the technology that the bad actors are using to launch the attacks. And there's a good reason for it. So if you think about our business environment, when we run a business, there are always competing priorities. We have shareholder interests to meet. We have to take care of our employees. We have to make revenue. We have to operate ethically and responsibly. We have a product roadmap that we have to deliver to, etc. So there are always a lot of competing priorities for finite resources in a legitimately operating business. Now, if you look at a fraud business, the only job they have to do is to launch attacks which are successful in getting the assets that they need, whether that's financial assets or data and information. They don't operate ethically or responsibly. They don't have shareholder expectations to meet. They do not take care of their employees, and we can talk about the whole human trafficking effect that these scams are having on our society. So there are no competing priorities. There is only one focus, and that is to use the best technology available out there in order to launch the most successful attacks to get the most money, right? And so they can afford to, so the offensive tech, which is utilized to launch these attacks, is better than the defensive tech. Not only that, there is a lot of return on investment. So the numbers we are talking in the case of the Hong Kong CFO deepfake, 25 million US dollars, right? It hasn't cost them $25 million to design and launch this attack. So the return on investment is very high, which means they can put some of those funds back into creating even better technology to create even more impactful attacks. So it is an arms race. So security, technology, processes have their own place in terms of protection and detection, but we have to be very much focused on the human aspect of it. So how do we give the context? How do we give the information and awareness to our employees to our customers, to all the humans which are engaged with our business, so that their radars and they are on high alert. So they are not always believing everything, every interaction that happens online, but they are treating it with caution, with curiosity.
Mm. Wow. And so what are the I mean you've talked about there really we're talking about training then, aren't we? Training our own employees to sort of detect these things and be on guard. What are examples of other things that companies can do to guard against this?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So, it, I'm talking about a layered approach. So we always talk about a layered approach, and that has its place. But what I'm also talking about is a parallel approach, which is the human risk management and the one of educating and empowering the humans which are part of the business. Now, technology is what should be utilized to detect and prevent, right? That's the technology's job. Then process have their own role to play as well. So the process ensures that there are gateways so that these things don't seep too far or too deep into the organization, that they are caught at different stages. And then there is the human piece. Now, because deepfakes are getting so hyper realistic, it is almost impossible to detect it or to tell apart with naked eye. So when I'm advising my clients, or when I'm running my master classes, I never say that you need to look out for something very specific when you see an image, because that's a no-win game. If I say to you today, well, look out for the teeth in the lips, because sometimes the synthetic or manipulated videos don't have realistic teeth. Well, that may be valid today, but in 2 weeks' time, that may not be valid, because the generative AI technology will have moved. And so now suddenly you'll have a very realistic set of teeth in a deepfake video. So telling people, teaching people to be forensic investigators or forensic analysts by uh, looking out for minor imperfections is a no-win scenario. What I
Okay.
say is that as people, we have to train our people in critical thinking and contextual awareness. So a few things play a huge part in it. So one is psychological safety, right? So if your employees feel empowered and safe enough to ask questions to the leadership team, then they will not just blindly follow the instructions because it comes from a senior executive. They will, if something doesn't feel quite right, they will go and ask a question. Hey, you asked me to do this. Help me understand the context behind it. Why does it make sense to do it now? Because they are doing their own background checks and they are verifying the information and the instructions they are receiving. But that they can only do that if they are not worried about losing their jobs or being or having negative implication in some way in the business. The other piece that plays a part is the power distance index. So the more hierarchy you have in an organization, and the more the senior executive and employees few levels below them um, feel disconnected, then there is a higher exposure to risk here, because the employee, the victim, remember there is the impersonation target and there is the execution target. So the target who has been identified as the person who will execute the instructions by the fraud actor, if distance between them and the impersonation is very large, then again, there's a higher risk exposure. So even if there are many layers in an organization, what you want to make sure is the executive team is very accessible to the people, so they don't
Mhm.
feel like there's a big distance between them. And then very importantly is the transparency in an organization. So I'm fully aware that when we are running businesses, it's impossible to be giving every piece of information to our employees in real time. There are sometimes you have to maintain a bit of you have to maintain a bit of a distance, and you have to give the information that is appropriate at the right time. But it's important to give context to your team, because if someone says, for example, if an email has been sent out on your behalf saying, hey, we've had a great quarter and I want to give you all a bonus. Click on this link to confirm the acceptance of your bonus. And it's accompanied by a deepfake video, which looks very much like you and sounds very much like you. An employee will be like, yeah, this is coming from my CEO. What's not to like about it? It's coming from the official company email, right? Immediately they click on the link and there's a malware installed on their devices, which suddenly now gives access to information, data, etc. Now, here, if they have the context, did we actually have a great quarter? I didn't hear Dan mention about this in our all hands meeting. I didn't have my team leader talk about it in our one-to-one or in our team meeting. So, hey, let me treat this with a little more curiosity. Let me go and ask my manager, is this real? Shall I go ahead and click on this? Like, what is going on? So that contextual awareness plays a big part in this. So if they just have a moment to stop and think, okay, this doesn't make sense in the context of the information that I have from
Yeah.
my business leaders, I need to be curious and cautious about this. So these are some of the things that play a very important part in keeping your organization secure, in making sure that your employees are not falling victim into the frauds, human manipulation tactics that they are using, and obviously the technology and processes play their
Mhm.
important role.
It's so much harder though, isn't it? I'm thinking of ourselves as a company. We run these sort of fake phishing email trade things that where we send out emails which are just these fake phishing emails to see who clicks the link, and it's really just to test how good our own training is against these things. But I mean, that just feels like so basic compared with what you're talking about, because it's very rare that you get sort of an emotional reaction to an email dropping into your inbox, or you just we're super on guard to these kinds of things. But yeah, with a video, somebody that saying something, asking you to do something in a very, very realistic way, it's yeah, you can see that the emotional side of things, the psychological side of things, is so much more real. Um,
It
it's
is.
yeah.
And you bring up an important point there, Dan. So the simulation exercises that you just described there, they were great at a point in time, but they are not keeping up with the new forms of attack vectors that we are seeing in the market, which has been
Mm,
powered and enabled by AI. And so, one thing that we do offer is deepfake simulation exercises. So, like I said at the start of our conversation, that it's not just one attack vector, it's multiple vectors come together to launch a very, very successful attack. So, we
mm,
offer those simulations. So, we work with business leaders in organizations to say, okay, let's talk about your business and where the weaknesses are in terms of human risk management, and then let's craft those simulations so that we can test the vulnerability of your organization based on how the employees are being manipulated emotionally, and that becomes a very, very powerful exercise. Once we do that, it gives a great a report to the leaders to say, oh, okay, so we've got some work to do here. That then leads into sort of more training, more awareness, more context, where we talk about case studies. We break down the case studies and we identify the failure modes so that the staff can understand, oh, wow, okay, so I need to look out for these kind of tactics in my personal life, but also in my professional life.
mm. Okay. And Artie, I mean, you were speaking earlier about how the technology is improving, and you spoke about the teeth of the attacker sort of looking sort of more and more realistic. What are some of the more kind of the longer term threats that you see on the horizon when it comes to deep fakes and these types of scams?
Yeah, I mean, It's limitless, right? Every day we are seeing new type of attack vectors being launched. So recently I was reading somewhere about so the opposite of romance scam. These are called pig butchering scams, where you engage the individual and bring them into your world, create an enormous amount of trust, and then you grab the money from there, run away, never to be seen again. That's a pig butchering scam, and
Mm.
typically manifest in the romance type scenarios that I mentioned earlier. What we're now seeing is the opposite of that, which is the threat type scenarios. So people, educated people, doctors, etc., are receiving calls from FBI, for example, and saying, "Hey, we're watching you. You've been involved in some kind of criminal activity unknown to you." So they're telling this victim that you have been unknown to you. You have your information and your face is being utilized in cybercrime. And so we are now keeping an eye on you, and you need to allow us access to you in order to protect you.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
becomes so they are now becoming big brother. So they are now watching these victims all the time. They're putting psychological pressure on them and really grabbing them. Like, this is awful. This is really nasty. We're also seeing the use of personal attack to get to the organization that the person is working for. So again, if I take romance scam as an example, so if somebody is engaged in this in a with an individual they met over a dating site who is not real, but they don't know it, over time, they start to share information about their work because it's just a natural thing to do with someone you trust. Oh, I had a great day at work because I was able to close deal XYZ, and we've now made X million pounds for the business. Or I had a really bad day at work because XYZ is not going right, etc. So now you are sharing information with this with the attacker that they would otherwise not have access to. So what they're doing is they are building almost a map in their design of the attack to the organization. So inadvertently, an employee who has been a target of fraud in their personal life has now become a liability for the business because they have become a gateway for the attacker to get to the organization, which is obviously bigger money than they
Mhm.
would get from an individual. So the boundaries of attacks between a personal and a professional environment are being blurred, and they are
Mm.
penetrating in every which way they can get.
Wow. Well, RT, listen, it's been an absolutely fascinating discussion today. You're clearly super knowledgeable about this whole topic. I'm very grateful for your time. Before we finish, can you just tell us a little bit about, well, I guess firstly, where can we find you? Where can we follow you? But also just talk a little bit about your offering to businesses, to companies out there, because I understand you've mentioned it a number of times that you do offer services within this whole arena.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm RT Samani, and please, happy to share my profile with your audiences. Email me on rt@rtsamani.com, and I will always respond. So very easy to find me. In terms of my services, so we offer three different services. So one is a masterclass, so 60-minute class that I either can deliver virtually if you have a global team, or I can deliver on site if that is more appropriate. But it's a really kind of deep dive into a case study, how these attacks manifest in our environment, giving examples and context, and then what you need to do culturally. So a few things I already described in our call, in our conversation today. So we go through that. It's a very intense, packed masterclass, and the aim is to give a lot of information to the employees. So deepfake is not just a term that is sort of flying around they see on social media or on television. It actually brings home and gives context, so makes them more curious and cautious about their interactions online. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the simulation exercises that I talked about, which is we work with the leaders to figure out on a quarterly basis how we should send these simulation attacks and figure out which employees, where are the vulnerabilities and the breakpoints in the business, and then how we should fix it. And then the third piece is should, for whatever reason, this type of attack do manifest in your business, what does the executive team need to do to contain the damage? So how do you contain the PR? How do you communicate with your clients, with your employees, etc.? So we do tabletop exercises to make sure that there is a crisis management plan in place should a deep fake or a social engineering type attack manifest in your business. And all of these things are bolted on to the existing simulations or existing exercises that you may already have in place. So what I'm not saying is that we replace what you have in place. What I'm saying is that what you have in place may not be covering some of these emerging threats and the emerging attacks, and we can help you there.
So it's an additional layer, effectively, isn't it? Which is what security is all about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, Arti, thank you very much for your time today. It's been yeah, truly eye-opening, eye-popping, in fact, as well. I will never forget Rihanna joining my call like that. But yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. It's important that we have these kind of conversations to really drive that awareness out in the market. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for recording this episode.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.